There we go. Cool, we're getting started. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I'm Brandon Bruce. I'm co-founder, CEO, or as I like to call myself, chief cat herder at Uncat. We make an application for accountants and bookkeepers that helps categorize previously uncategorized transactions with your clients. And I'll be showing you that in a minute, but really thrilled to have Omri Mann here. He's co-founder and COO over at Anchor. We've had a chance to hang out at a couple conferences now, one in Florida and most recently at QuickBooks Connect in Las Vegas. And a couple weeks ago, we put our heads together, decided to do a webinar, and he showed me around the app. And I gotta say, Anchor is super cool. So if you're here to learn more about how to get paid quickly, efficiently, and cost effectively, Anchor's gonna knock your socks off. They've developed some really cool tech. So I'll let him introduce himself, and we'll kick off by taking a look at Anchor. And if one of you is brave enough, jump in and set up a free account, and we can even do some of that live. We've got time. So Omri, take it away, and then I'll follow you and show Uncat.
All right, amazing. So first of all, thank you for having me. This is exciting. I enjoyed meeting you in every conference because you're the person that's always smiling, and you bring in such a good energy to something that is normally a lot of mostly serious people. So thank you for doing that. And here it's the same energy I feel. So it's fun. A little bit about myself. I've been an entrepreneur since I can remember myself. So I own several businesses in very diverse categories. And there was something in common with everything, is that I didn't like chasing clients to get paid. I didn't like the feeling that it made me feel like a mouse, basically. That, yeah, I'll send you the invoice again. Oh, you're on a ski vacation. Sure, no problem. Like these calls, and no matter, I had a consultancy firm, and no matter how much value we brought to clients, that was always an issue. So some cases we would suffer from late payments, and the other cases we would suffer from just working really hard to maintain a very, very efficient, straightforward billing procedures that would make sure that everything is in line, but we put in a ton of time and effort that was very costly. And whenever we looked outside to other other solutions, whether it's SaaS or e-commerce, it always looks so easy and shiny, and everything just sort of flows. And this is how we came up with Anchor. So can I share a slide?
Yeah, do. Yeah, you can share screen there, bottom middle. Just click present now.
Yes. Perfect. Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
So we came up with a solution that this is how we wanted our life to look. So at the first of each month, I don't want to do anything, or at the end of the month, I just want to get notified that I got paid. And this is that was our experience in many cases when we had software companies, and that was the situation. But whenever a service was provided, it was never the case. So basically, we set up to create Anchor, which, the premise was to create the easiest platform for bookkeepers and accountants to get paid automatically. And it sounds quite easy, but it was quite a road to cross, because we've discovered that AR as a whole is it's a messy process to solve. And what we've seen is that a big part of the problem is the things that we're not necessarily aware that are harming our businesses. So we've figured out, or saw, that the stats are against us. 90% of businesses that fail in the States are actually failing due to cash flow issues. And that makes sense. If you're saying, okay, I have issue with cash, I'm out of money, the business dies. What doesn't make sense, or didn't make sense for us, was that 60% out of those businesses were actually profitable on paper, yet the entire running around getting paid actually sort of killed them. And we want to remedy that. And when you're looking into other statistics, something that comes to mind is revenue leakage. which is something that most of us are completely or most of us are unaware of, is that the fact that sometimes things that we tend to forget. Let's say you started working with someone and they described what they're looking for, for you guys to do, or clean their books, is like this very tight, organized project. And then once you lift the hood, you discover it's a completely different thing. And you add something at the side to note to yourself to add that to the next bill or the difference. And if that is forgotten and you discover that 3 months later, the tendency is not to go back to your client and say, okay, yeah, let's bill you. Normally you waive it or you forget that. And when that's accumulated, that's really, really significant leakage. And the way that we are looking to solve all of these things are mostly with automation. But I can't see you guys. So for me, it's a very big challenge. And wait 1 second. So I would like to ask the group here, like just looking at this, if you can just share with me maybe on the chat, is how do you feel about your accounts receivable? Where would you put yourself in one of these categories? Brendan, are we still?
I feel, the latter one just makes me nervous. Maybe it's because I broke my leg last year, not from a ladder accident, but just in general. So I kind of like to picture myself in the tractor, which is probably even more dangerous, but it looks kind of fun.
It is, but can we get comments from people that?
Yeah, folks. Hopefully everyone hears the audio. Okay, if you can jump into the chat, which is toward the bottom right of your screen, just click in the chat and let Omri know kind of how you're feeling on the receivable side. Is this something where it's like, hey, we got this wired, this is awesome. We do feel like that at the beginning of the month, everything's just flowing and getting paid, versus we got something that's not working super well, versus this is a huge hassle, right? It's overwhelming. It's taking up an inordinate amount of time, energy, resources to get it done. That would be helpful. Just a quick message in the chat if you have time, but otherwise, Omri, keep rolling.
All right. So going back to the presentation. So when I'm presenting, I'm not seeing the people, and I like seeing the faces. So I'll start. I'll continue a little bit without that. So essentially, what we wanted to create is a solution that business owners and specifically accountants and bookkeepers are not the last to be paid. Because as a business owner, as a service provider, I had a tendency to give my heart out, really do a good job, and then not pay myself first, which is something that we see all across, and specifically in our community and in our industry. And that's, we have a reply. All right, is out of control. It was hello, everybody who are seeing the chat. Clients to collection. Okay, so huge hassles. So we're seeing that people are, no one likes it, and I haven't heard. I had hundreds of calls, and I can say with confidence that I still haven't heard someone saying, "Wow, I love collection calls. This is so much fun. Let's do more of that." So if I'll get back to the solution and how we turned and how we went around to solve it, is more than anything, we wanted to create a solution that doesn't go around and present something that is completely different than how you used to work. We wanted to create something that's very similar to the existing workflows, only without the work. So the way that we do that, and maybe here, in a normal situation, when you're sending out an engagement letter, but before I dive in, I'll just explain what we're doing. We tried to solve the need for automation with billing and collection. And to do that, we actually had to start before the billing even begins. So that means starting from the engagement letter and not just jumping over to the invoicing and automation and dunning. And right now, what most businesses are doing. You're sending an engagement letter, and whether it's on a Word document, a DocuSign, a Hello sign, or anything else, it might be digital, but it's still manual, and it still represents paper in concept. We looked at it and say, how do we take that and create something that both a computer can understand and a human can understand, and your clients actually enjoy signing? And we realized that most proposals or engagement letters are lengthy, and the clients don't like those. They normally just skim through them, and they want to get to the bottom line. They want to get to the price. They want to validate that what you promised them or had in the conversation matches the agreement. So we said, why do that? Let's just put the bottom line on top, make it mobile first, and give the clients the ability to see everything on a small screen, sign really quickly with their finger. And then once they sign, they have the terms, they have everything. The screen will flip, and we will ask them for either a free ACH connection or a credit card input. And the default is that the credit card fees are on the clients, not on you as vendors, due to the fact that we're giving them a very valid free option. So if they want their points or just convenience, it's great, but the default is that they're paying for it. And here is where the magic begins. Right now, after they sign, you have a single source of truth in the cloud, and this is not just a single time agreement. This is an ongoing, living, breathing agreement, and I'll explain shortly. This is, so after they sign, you have a signed engagement letter that for us, a meaning of assigned is with a payment information. And this could be a one-time, an advance, a range, recurring, with milestones. It could be quarterly, it could be weekly, it could be monthly. Basically, we support every kind of payment system or pricing model. And the important thing is that we're still keeping that automation intact, and I'll explain soon. So after you do your work, the invoice will be generated automatically directly from the agreement, because the agreement knows basically how much how much you're charging, what are you charging for, what are the terms, what are, if there's a milestone, if there's a submission that's due. So the invoice is being populated directly from the agreement, and then immediately after that, a charge is being made automatically. You can control it per agreement. You can decide whether or not it should be completely automated, or you want your client to press approve. Let's say you have something that, it's a deliverable, and you want them to get the deliverable and then sign and approve the payment. That's completely optional. But basically the default is that the payment is automated. And then once it's automated, we're transferring the funds to you and reconciling it for you in QuickBooks. So without any silos, from proposal, engagement letter, collecting the payment information, generating an invoice, doing the actual payment processing, forwarding the funds, and reconciling it, everything is done in one system without silos. So you don't need different software to do that, and you don't need to start, collecting or, merging things with Zapier. Everything is happening within our system. So we control the data flow and make sure that there's no errors and everything's on time. And just one aspect around the fact that it's dynamic, let's say that you want to change something. You started working with your client, and they said, okay, we need 1, 2, 3 more, like additional services, or they want to change the price, or you discover that it's actually much, you want to charge them more. Normally, that breaks the automation. You need to send something like an additional invoice, or go and revisit that agreement altogether and make them sign something again. With Anchor, it's just a click of a button saying add, change, or edit, and your client will get a notification with both text message and email saying, this is what your accountant, your bookkeeper is asking. The minute that they press approve, it's becoming part of that binding agreement, and that additional charge would either be collected immediately or will be added to the next billing cycle. So any questions up till this part?
So I'll just jump in simply to say, when I first saw this, the thing that resonated, maybe it's because I went to law school a long time ago, was that, getting paid really originates with an agreement. And sometimes that's just a handshake or a phone call, et cetera. But what Anchor helps with that I love is it codifies it, right? There's a shared document. So in law school, we called it a meeting of the minds. So we can refer to the document and say, this is what we agreed to. And there's a schedule on it. And so it's like, well, someone's going to manually have to go in there and say, what does the contract say? And then when should we bill? And is it net 30 or net 60 or 90? And what's the penalty if it's late? Is there interest if it's late? That was a question from Ken that came in, right? So all these different variables. And instead of having to do that in a manual way, which is what most of us are used to doing, it just sends it out. And it's like, hey, per the agreement, right? Like we're all on the same page here. But here, the customer, their billing information's already in there. So not only is it send out and then wait, hope they see it, hope they pay it. I was out of town, I was on a ski trip, all the examples he gave. Money flows in. All right, the payment method is already in there as part of the original contracting process, which I think is pretty cool.
Thank you. And the concept is not only, for it to be good for us as the service providers, but we want to make our clients happy as well. So essentially what we're doing is automating our accounts receivables process. But if you're looking at it and understanding what's happening on their end, they're actually canceling their AP process. Because normally what happens when they're getting our invoice, we're sending them to work. They need to get our invoice and then validate that it matches the hours or matches like any other thing that, the agreement that they never look at stated, or they just need to validate with their admin that something happened, or they trust us blindly and then but either way, most cases is that of AP in general, that process is meant to just make sure that there's no errors. There wasn't a duplicate invoice. It wasn't the charge that we already charged them. So they wanted, this has never happened to anyone in this forum naturally, but I'm talking about other people that potentially has ever made a mistake with an invoice. And this eliminates that for them. It makes the AP process for them moves from an AP process to an expense process, very similarly to how you're paying for SaaS, because you as a service provider are not generating the invoice manually. So that means that you're skipping, there's no errors, and they know that there's no surprises because it's generated from an agreement that they have approved. And it can have a range. You can actually set up an agreement and say the charge will be from between $1,000 and $3,000. And as long as the cost that you would then submit to the system at the end of the month, as long as it's within that $3,000 range, the billing will happen automatically. Let's say it's went overboard and it's 5,000, then your client will get a notification saying, okay, this exceeded the range. Would you like to approve this? They hit approve, the payment is done immediately. So we're trying to make sure that the automation doesn't break, and yet keeping it very transparent and easy for the client so that they're actually very happy with the solution and don't, resist it. And I'm seeing that. So, Ken, for cleanup interest over 12 payments, can you elaborate? So Ken is asking, what about interests? Making a sale for a cleanup. So you can, if I'm understanding correctly, basically you can state that you can add interest to things. But it will be a separate line item, meaning it doesn't calculate interest for you. But you can definitely state that if this happens, then that happens. Or if, let's say, if I have a milestone that's not met, and I can create sort of a rule that happens. Or something that we're seeing quite a lot is the fact that if you setting up that, and next year it's going to be an additional 3% lift in pricing, that will happen automatically. And this naturally, I don't know if you guys ever experienced that, but If you ever had a situation where the initial engagement included, you gave someone a discount, and then the next year, the following year, the agreement was that you'll, add, X%, 3%, 5% lift on the price, and you forgot about that, or actually became emotionally involved with the client and then said, he is having a hard year, let's waive it. So I'm seeing Brendan smiling.
That would never happen, right?
That will never happen.
Oh, I understand the situation, right? But here you could officially make a change and have it reflected in the document versus, there's some sort of unknown back channel that some other partner agreed to, or some other employee said no problem, take the next 2 weeks, and no one's on the same page with that person. So here's a way to centralize that sort of information.
So moving forward, so it is, and I'm moving forward with another option. So another thing that we're doing on top of the regular flow is a flow that includes any sort of document deliverable or report that you need to submit or you want to share with your client, but you want to make sure that you're going to get paid in a very close proximity to them approving it. So the way it works is the process is exactly the same, but let's say you want to, it's either a report or for people doing taxes naturally, so that applies. And you can upload any document to our system, and these could be things that are directly from QuickBooks as well. And we will present it with a watermark, and it's not downloadable or shared, meaning that the client can view it and then approve that they've read it, they accept receiving it, accept the actual work that you've done. The minute they accept, we're actually collecting the payment and then releasing that document for them to download or share it, approving it with you, and then you can actually, if it's a tax, you can submit it, or if it's just a document that you want to charge for, that it's being taken care of. And the most important thing is send it and forget it. Once you send it or upload anything to the system does the follow-up with the client automatically. So it makes sure that, they saw it, they signed for it. And once we dive in, you'll see that you have complete insight into how it actually behaves and looks, and can track, when they opened it, when they saw it. So you have a complete understanding of where does it stand within the process. Any questions so far?
One quick question from Ken was, where are the signed documents stored?
All right, so those are stored on our servers. Everything is completely secured. It's part of your account, and for every client you have a place that you can store those documents. But it's on our servers. It's easy. And then after they approved it, they're getting access to it. So they're getting access. There's a client portal that they can access that houses all their invoices, all their documents, and logs all of the history, meaning that they can see when they signed, what they've signed, if there was a change or anything. So down the line, if someone forgets and say, well, I never approved that, you can actually direct them to their own log, or they can see, oh, I actually did sign this on this and that date. So there's a complete transparent record of everything. So I would love, I'd love for more questions if anything, and if not, we'll dive into the product a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And folks can add questions as we go, throughout, right? So feel free, folks in the chat, ask questions throughout the webinar about Anchor, about Uncat, frankly, about anything in general, if we can be helpful with it. One of the things that I can add here, this is a link. So if y'all are like, hey, I'd like to give this a shot, which why not? Here's $100 in credit for Anchor. So if you want to go in there and check it out, see how it works.
You show them the product before you entice them to it.
Yeah, but already it's I like it. I think it's useful when the price is right. It's not an expensive product. It's not like enterprise, like, oh, it's gonna be a big setup cost or something. You can set up pretty easily, and it's $5 to get paid.
Yeah, maybe we should address that if we're actually sharing this. So the pricing model that we've chosen after we've examined a lot of options is we decided we want to have complete alignment with our clients around the payment, meaning we chose it's $5, it's a flat $5 for any payment received, meaning if there's an invoice goes out for $1,000, that means that we're deducting $5, and then you receive 995. So apart from that, there's nothing, and it's a pay-as-you-go system, meaning there's no subscription, no minimums, no percentages, no commitments, and you can use the system. Basically, it's free. Everything, like, so the signatures, invoicing, everything is free up until the point that you want to use the automatic collection. And then we're only charging you once it works, meaning you get paid, you have money in the bank. So we really believe in the product, and we wanted to make it as easy as possible to just use it and have the value it provides, talk on its own. And what we're seeing right now, we're measuring religiously a lot of KPIs and understanding what impact it's generating for these businesses. And what we've seen is that it creates roughly between 25 and 26% in lift in profit and bottom line. And this is like from two test cases that we're going to release soon that have been with the product completely for a full year. So it's like fresh data, and we have a lot of different data points around how much time it saves, how are clients reacting to this, and we're seeing improvement in all these metrics. Times it takes people to sign your engagement letter and onboard, times it takes you to actually release a proposal. You spoke with someone, normally takes, could be, a few hours. I get back to the office. Here you can do it like really, really quickly, and the team doesn't need training for that. So a lot of benefits that we're tracking, but with, I want to just jump right into the product. So this would be our dashboard that you can see the pipeline of agreements, meaning everything moving forward. These are already approved agreements. Let's say in this account, there's 32 of them, and that's the accumulated value of them. And then if there's any attention that is required, then you have, notifications. So this is a demo account. I'm not showing any real data of clients. So we're playing with this quite a bit, but you have complete understanding of, what's pending, what you need to do. And we're only, the notification that comes are on a need to do basis, meaning the system notifies you if you need to actively do something. If everything's okay, you don't need to do anything. And the proposal page is basically, you can see what's being reviewed. And as I shared before, you see that here the proposal was sent in this date and the client reviewed it. And then the minute that you actually see that, you can send them a reminder again, that the system will actually send that reminder, or you can copy the link to that proposal specifically and share it with a text, or if you want to personalize it and just remind them of what you've actually requested them to do. And once they sign it, it turns into an agreement. And here you can list, all the agreements per client. It's very easy. It's very straightforward. And if we want to just add a quick charge, let's say what we talked about, so you don't need to do anything fancy. You just choose the client, choose the service, and then, and then just add, choose how much, add the charge. That is all it takes. The system sends them that notification that you asked for additional funds for something. And once they approve it, it becomes part of that binding agreement. Any questions so far before we actually create an agreement looking into the services? So Tim is asking. All right. Okay, so Tim is asking a great question. What if a client wants to continue making payments by mailing checks or using bill.com? So you can actually, let's say for even cash, any payment that is actually being facilitated outside of Anchor, you can still mark it as paid manually in the system, and then you just skip the collection part of Anchor, but you can still mark it and it will still be reconciled for you in QuickBooks. So it's not limited to only using and getting paid through Anchor. We acknowledge the fact that some folks potentially are like want to pay in cash or anything else. We, from our experience with diversity of clients, they basically say we don't want to deal with checks anymore. Please pay us through Anchor. And we managed to convert even, I think, the more mature clients that have been very, very timid with paying online and doing the different things. The fact that it's very accessible for them, it's super simple, made it possible for clients that were using checks for years and refused to do anything else to actually migrate into something simple. And they found that it made their life simpler as well. So I hope that answers the question. And if we want to create a new agreement, there's a difference between a new proposal for a new client or an invitation for an existing client. And we look at these things completely different because the majority of your clients, the way that you're serving them, we have an option for a bulk upload, meaning that you can actually, instead of sending agreements or proposals one by one to your clients, we have the ability to export the terms and everything that you're using today from QuickBooks and match it to a CSV file and do a bulk upload. It's limited to 400 clients a day, but this is what we currently support, and we help you through that process. You have a dedicated customer success account manager that does basically everything for you or guides you to, if you want to do it yourself. So that was a very, very important aspect for us, developing the product, because we realized that onboarding, to a new software, if it's difficult and if it's annoying, people don't like it and will tend not to use it. And we don't like using software that makes us work. That's the reality. We want it, where everything needs to be the Amazon experience. It needs to be simple. It needs to be quick. And this is what we're trying to create. And so far, at least according to the feedback, we're doing a decent job at. And if I'm coming back to the agreement, basically here, you can just create a new contact or choose the existing contact, select services. And here you have either existing templates that you've chosen or created. We have a lot of templates that we provide on the system when you onboard, but you can easily create a new service from scratch. But out of respect for the time, let's just look into an existing service. So let's say it's bookkeeping. Here you can actually write the description of everything, choose if it's an ongoing service or a one-time service, and you have a representation of it here. Then you can set the price. You can add a discount if you want. We recommend not to do that. And then you choose the billing cycle. It's monthly, quarterly, yearly. We added weekly as well, so monthly. And then you can choose if the trigger is automatic, according to a schedule, or it's manually upon completion, or you can choose that it will actually be for the initial things upon signing the first agreement. So when you're just onboarding a new client, you can say, I want an advance. I want it to be the minute they sign, I want, a portion of the money or all the money or one of the services to be charged immediately. And then basically that's saved. You can add that service to that agreement. You can pause certain, billing or certain services on each agreement. And then you can go to the settings. You can add a name. Let's say if you have a client that has multiple businesses that you're serving and you want every agreement to have their own name, it's definitely doable. This is the introductory message that goes with the email that accompanies the engagement letter, and an effective date, if it's on acceptance, or if it's something that's supposed to be activated in a future time. Terms of use, you can easily use our own. We have something that's very fair for both parties that a very fancy law firm, labored on, so it protects you very well. It covers everything, but it doesn't sound intimidating to a client. Or you can simply upload your own and just throw your PDF or your existing agreement there so that they'll be able to see that it's exactly the same. Add any notes. And here, in terms of the payment options, you can choose the billing day, if it's the last day of the month, or anything other than that, and the payment terms, if it's upon receipt of the invoice, if it's immediate. Here is something that's a bit advanced. Sometimes if you're onboarding a client that is a new client, that they formed a new company and not necessarily have a payment method or even a bank account, but you want to start generating invoices, you're able to enable them to delay that payment so they can still sign the agreement, and then after 2 months, we'll start asking them to add that automatically so you don't need to chase them. Manual approval if you don't want it to be charged automatically, and then you can control who takes the credit card fees, if it's the client or you. Again, we strongly recommend that it's on them. So basically, that's in the essence. I can go on and on and on, but I want to leave time for Brandon. So this is Anchor. It's an automated billing system for you guys, at least for our space in general. This is our specialty, and this is what we focus on. And we're in the business of getting you paid fast and easy. Would refunds go through the system, or would you just no? So refunds are in the system. Great question. Thank you, Ken. So if let's say you need a refund, it's actually through the system. There's a button that you just press, and it creates the refund. And right now we're working on a partial refund as well, so that let's say you just if you don't want to refund everything, it's going to be through the system directly.
Sweet. Thanks, Omri. That's a great tour.
Thank you.
Everybody's gotten a good intro into Anchor, and check it out. Let me show you a little bit about Uncat, and I'll show my screen here. There we go. So Uncat, as many of you know or might have surmised, is short for uncategorized. So we specialize in fixing uncategorized transactions with your clients. So we recently actually published a bunch of stats from this past year. A lot of people are now using Uncat, and thankfully they like it a lot. We've gotten a lot of nice reviews across 2022. We helped bookkeepers and accountants categorize about $450 million of uncategorized transactions, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. We see a lot of expense transactions from Amazon, Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, Target, places where you can buy almost anything. So you pretty much always have to ask the client what it was and what it was for. Even having a receipt doesn't typically get you there because you don't know the why for the transaction. Similarly, we saw a lot last year of uncategorized deposits from sources like Venmo and PayPal and Square and Stripe and Cash App. And of course, and Omri just talked about it, cash itself. A lot of contractors and trades and lots of businesses just get paid in cash. And the question is, how should it be categorized? So my co-founder, Adam Slack, who runs a firm here in Knoxville called Two Roads, they were the first firm of the future in 2016 that Intuit recognized. And so he's very tech forward. And when we were talking a couple of years ago, he said, one of the biggest pain points we have in our firm, and they're a pretty big firm, they're 350 plus clients. He said, we're sending out 350 spreadsheets from QuickBooks Online to our clients with these uncategorized reports. And the clients don't love receiving those. And some of them don't reply. But when we do get replies, then the bookkeeping team is burning out because they have to copy paste all of the answers back from clients into QuickBooks. He's like, there's got to be a better way. Couldn't we build an app that syncs uncategorized transactions, tells the client, gets their responses, we can review them, categorize them, and then sync it all back into QuickBooks. So that's Uncat in a nutshell. That's what we built. This is our homepage. So from here, you can easily start a trial. There's a free 2-week trial. We'll send you a free coffee to say thanks. You can add a client simply by starting that trial, signing into QuickBooks Online, choosing the first client that you want to connect to Uncat, and then inviting them by email. So they'll receive an email that says, hey, your accounting professional, so I'll use me as an example, Brandon, needs information back from me about 17 transactions worth $3,500. And they'll just click a link in that email. And that's key for us, is that we want it to be dead simple for our clients. We want it to be dead simple for your clients. So clients don't have to create an account. They don't have to download or maintain or install an app. All they have to be able to do is click a link in that email, and it will take them straight into their dashboard in Uncat. I'll also show you a setting where you can put in their phone number, and we'll text them a notification with that magic link. Then all they have to do is hit the text message link, and it'll open up Uncat in Safari on an iPhone or Chrome on an Android. Pretty slick, and it's a huge benefit for those clients that don't necessarily check or respond to email. Pretty much all of us are conditioned now to respond to text messages, so that's been very effective for us. This is an example of a client dashboard. So they click that link, and they'll come in here, and they'll see something that honestly looks pretty familiar. It looks and feels like a spreadsheet. The big advantage is this is an up-to-date spreadsheet. It's syncing live with QuickBooks. The spreadsheet doesn't get out of date. You don't have to send a new one to the client saying, hey, we fixed some of these already, but some of these are brand new. It auto refreshes. And here what the client can do is provide you with a description. What was this transaction all about? It's at Applebee's. It was a meal, but who was it with? What was it for? Why did he have that meal? And optionally, do you have a receipt for it? Or if it's a uncategorized deposit, you have a PO or a contract or some other supporting documentation that might be helpful. So the typical configuration is we ask clients for a description and optionally for an attachment. And when they enter that information and click save, it's going to do basically 3 things. It's going to sync that description and that attachment into QuickBooks onto that transaction. It's going to show up on your dashboard in Uncat so you can review it. And we're going to send you an email. And we send that as a daily digest so that it's not overwhelming. That way you'll get an email once a day that says, hey, you got 13 clients that updated 44 transactions. Or you got 2 clients that updated 3 transactions. If there are no updates, we won't email you. Same on the client side. If they don't have any transactions to review, we're not going to bother them with an email because there's nothing for them to see here. So they can make those updates. I'll show you in settings where you can configure Uncat to ask for more information. So if you have clients that are pretty comfortable or familiar with QuickBooks, with their own chart of accounts, with classes, etc., you can ask the client to provide additional information. But by default, and for many firms, this is sufficient. They just want a description back. They don't want the client touching the chart of accounts. And so this is how they go for it. But if you've got a client that can add vendors and classes and stuff like that, you can set up Uncat to ask them for that. So they've clicked save. Now we'll come over to the Uncat dashboard. You can see a bunch of transactions here highlighted in yellow with the label client updated. So we can review their updates here based on the description. We can then categorize the transaction. This is the chart of accounts synced in from QuickBooks for this client. If we want to, we can also class the transaction. We can choose or add or change the vendor. And we can also come in here and choose customer, tax, location. If they've made other changes, you can approve them here and click save. Otherwise, you can override changes the client made and sync them into QuickBooks that way. You can select a transaction. For example, it's like this Amazon expense, and you come up here to the action menu and split it. So that's a often requested and used feature. You can split by category or by class. You can also select multiple transactions and come up here and apply a bulk action, like apply the same location or the same message or the same class to multiple transactions. Speaking of messages, if you have a question for the client or have a piece of information that will help them get to clarity on a transaction, you can pop that in messages. They can do the same back to you, and those will pop up on your dashboard. You can search for particular transactions. So I mentioned Amazon before. If we just want to knock out the Amazon transactions, we can do that here. It also gives me a chance to show you, you can see multiple clients on one page. So for those of you that may have a handful or a dozen or 24 clients, it's pretty easy just to navigate through on one pane of glass in Uncat and knock out all their uncategorized all at once. If you've got hundreds of clients, you can also jump to them quickly here or do a quick type ahead. And we serve solo bookkeepers and accountants all the way up to some of the biggest firms in the country with hundreds of users and hundreds, maybe even thousands of clients. It's a very flexible platform. You can see here that we're syncing back for this client all the way really to the beginning of 2021, and there's no close date. If there's a close date, we would only sync back that far, but otherwise you get to choose how far back you want to go, which makes Uncat really helpful for cleanups, as well as just to configure it. Sometimes people want to set the close date or the sync back to date very recently, so it's not pulling in older transactions that might not need the client attention. So that's the dashboard. Client settings are super straightforward. You choose the accounts that you want Uncat to sync. So usual suspects are uncategorized expense, income, asset, ask my accountant, suspense. You can click here and choose any account from your chart of accounts that you want to sync in. This is where you choose the date you want to sync back to. If you want to sync in transactions that are already properly categorized but are missing a piece of information, for example, a class or an attachment, and you want to bring all those transactions into Uncat to get that piece of information back from the client, you can use Uncat to do that as well. These are the notification settings. So by default, Uncat will notify clients weekly. You can choose the day of the week. That tends to work very well because when you switch to monthly, the client often will kind of shrug shoulders like, I don't know, that was 30 days ago, right? That I was traveling a lot. I don't remember what I bought. I can't remember that deposit. It was a long time ago. Weekly, we tend to be better at remembering. And for some, especially really high volume like e-commerce clients, we have firms that will set it to daily because they need to stay up to date all the time. These are the dashboard settings. So by default, the description is updatable and required of the client. Meanwhile, attachments are optional. You can hit this master switch up at the top, and that gives you very granular control over what the client can see, what they can edit, and which are required. So now in this configuration, the client is not only required to provide a description, they're also required to provide a class. And that will be reflected if I go back to their dashboard. Now you can see, they can see everything. They're required to put a description of class in. They could optionally categorize. So you can kind of slice and dice Uncat the way you want to match for any particular client. And then lastly, these are the client users. So it might be a simple small business client with one owner or a couple co-owners, or you might have a dozen different users. That's all fine. It's all included in the same low price. So here you can invite multiple users. This user is only going to see transactions that originated on their credit card. So you can assign a payment account. This is an example of just assigning a single uncategorized account, in this case, uncategorized income, which could be assigned to the AR manager because they might not have great visibility into the expenses being incurred by the client, but they should be able to answer for all the uncategorized income. All right, so those are the client settings, and then your overall settings are simply going to show you a list of the clients you've connected to Uncat, your colleagues, so you can invite coworkers inside of your practice, and if you want to, assign them to particular clients or leave it blank, in which case they'll see all the clients across the firm. And then this is popular. You can put in the name of your firm, upload your logo, and change the color of the app to reflect your brand. That way they'll see your name, your logo, your color. They're happy with the app. They're happy with the firm that they work with. And at the bottom of this page is billing, and billing's super easy. It's just $5 per client file you connect to Uncat per month. We integrate with QuickBooks Online. We also have a really strong integration with QuickBooks Desktop, and we integrate with Xero. So I'll pause there. That was the lightning tour of Uncat. And let me switch back to the Google meeting to see if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, Beverly loves the batch. Thank you, Beverly. I appreciate it. We love that you're using it, and thanks for coming in to say hello and to check out Anchor as well. Tim, what about unaccepted transactions? Do you have to move transactions to a register before Uncat can send to the client? Yes, great question, Tim. You absolutely do. So you cannot access the bank feed through the Intuit API because they don't consider those transactions to be part of the registry yet because they're not. So from the bank feed, either by automated rule or manually, it's got to make it in to the general ledger. And from one or more of those accounts, we can then sync them into Uncat. So as a best practice, once it's in the bank feed, you got to get it in the register one way or the other. So sometimes people will create an automated rule that says, look, we never really know what Venmo deposits are. We don't know who they're from. They just arrive. It's magic. And so all of Venmo needs to go into uncategorized income so we can ask the client what it was. Are these reimbursements? Is this payment for a product or service or some combination thereof? We got to know. Leaving it in the bank feed for a while or even a pretty long time, generally not considered to be a best practice because then it's not going to get included in any reporting. And it's almost like it doesn't exist, but of course it does. It happened. It needs to get into QuickBooks one way or the other. But yeah, great question. Because sometimes, and we've seen this, firms as a practice will leave things in the bank feed until they have the information that they need to categorize. It's better to put it in uncategorized or ask my client or ask the accountant, et cetera, in order to get that information back. Okay, Beverly, question. One thing you noticed recently, some transactions aren't coming out of Uncat if the client fixes it in QuickBooks. That should be happening. So if you want to shoot me an email with an example, we'll check it out. There may be something sideways there, and we'd be happy to fix it and make sure that those clear. So to her question, the way that it generally works, and certainly should, is that if a transaction is updated or categorized in Uncat, that will sync into QuickBooks. Meanwhile, if you get the answers back and decide to do that work inside QuickBooks and categorize, it will drop off of the Uncat dashboard because now it's not in an account that is set to sync with Uncat. So that's the first thing that I'll check when you shoot me an email is just, did it get categorized into another account that's also set to come into Uncat? That happens from time to time. So happy to check it out. You bet. Thank you. I know we're close to the top of the hour. Any other questions I can help with and or Omri can help with for either Uncat or Anchor? We're happy to do it. And of course, both of us are available after the call too. You say anchor.com is their website. Uncat.com is ours. I'll type in an email here if anybody on the call doesn't have it already. That's how to reach me. Super easy. Or you've got chat on our website, or you can shoot an email through the contact us page if you would like. Cool. Thanks, Beverly. Yeah, for sure. And there's Omri's email.
So our domain has been, people have told us it's hard to reach us. So it's sayanchor.com. Normally they just do Anchor and then they go to somewhere else. So eventually we'll definitely buy that domain, but it will take a while. They're not selling it yet. So it's sayanchor.com for now.
Right. Internet real estate. It's a complicated business.
I agree, but in general, like if anybody wants to reach out and you have questions about anything that you feel that we can help, whether it's Anchor related or not, we'd love to help. We're quite experienced with a lot of things that, interested in and can be of value to small businesses. It could be marketing aspects or, anything that you feel that we can, add value to your business. We'd love to help regardless of whether or not we're working together. We're in the same community. So please feel free.
Awesome. I think that's it for today, folks. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for the time. Hope it was valuable. Bye-bye.
Really.